Welcome on my podcast, Permission Entrepreneuriale, that can be translated by Entrepreneurship Permission. Here we talk about new ways of living, being bold, think, and act out of the box. I want this podcast to be empowering and inspiring. I wish you a good listening. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to welcome today Marci from Chicago. Hello, Marci.
Hi, Melanie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy because we met in Uvita a few weeks ago, and we loved you and Julian and I, and with you and Mark. So we had wonderful talks together. We also went for dinner one night, and we spent 3 hours together, and we didn't really notice the time was going so fast. So this was
The time flew by.
The time flew by. Thank you. And so I thought that it would be very interesting to invite you on my podcast. I just created a new series in English, which the name is I Choose My Life Now. And I think you can be very inspiring because I will let you introduce yourself, but to make it short. So you retired a few months ago, and you're traveling in Central America.
That is correct. That's correct. We retired. My husband and I retired last December, or very early December. And then by December 11th, we were in Mexico. We spent some time in Mexico. We're planning on spending the next year or two in Central America and some parts of South America to see where we want to settle.
Yeah. So can you introduce yourself, like telling us about your life and what you did before and when this project popped?
Yes. So it's shocking to me that we're actually here. We still look at each other. We're like, oh my goodness, this is our life now. But both my husband and I grew up. It lived in the Chicagoland area all our lives. We stayed there and married and raised our two children, our two daughters. And when we found that, and I've been in the social services, not-for-profit social services my entire career. And you work very hard, as you do in many sectors of careers, but work really, really hard, many, many hours a week. And when our second daughter went to college, we just found that we started working more and more instead of being empty nesters. And it just got the best of us. And then about maybe 8 years ago, my husband, who hates the cold, even though he lived in cold his entire life, just got it in his head that he wanted to go to Costa Rica. And our children, for Father's Day, gave him a subscription to a magazine called International Living. And we just loved reading it and learning about it. And we're like, let's really think about doing this. And we did. And so here we are. So we took about a year. It was a lot of planning, and our children were very supportive of us, and they're both in their early 30s now, and they're very, very supportive of us. And so we spent about again, I was working 60 hours a week, and I felt like it was just too much, and I was actually becoming very concerned because I didn't want to learn anything new. I felt like I had no space in my head to learn anything new. And that was a very big concern of mine. It's like, no, this is not what life is about. So we made a conscious decision to do this. And so we really upended our life.
Yeah. And so why Costa Rica? Is it because Mark was looking on Costa Rica, or why Central America?
Well, we retired, I'm 62, and it's not like we have a great deal of money. So we knew that if we were to retire around this time that we did, we needed to go to a place where our dollar was stretched further. And all Central America, we thought it was still a little closer to home. Like going to Europe is very long flights, and we didn't know that if it would be work with our schedule. So, I mean, our finances. And Mark just fell in love with reading about Costa Rica. It's just the lushness of it, the beauty of it, the more laid back. And so I think if we did this 8 years ago, we probably would have already been living in Costa Rica for many years, but the timing wasn't right. And then as we just started reading more and more about it, it just became like this little fantasy for us. And then it became a reality.
And you know, sometimes when you're reading a lot about it, watching a lot about it, you can have expectations. So when you arrived in Costa Rica, what were your thoughts about it, about the reality?
Mark was thinking that Uvita would be much less developed than it actually is, and I think, but that's okay. But were just so in awe again about how beautiful it is and how green it is. Even though we came to Costa Rica at the end of the dry season, it was still so beautiful, still so very green, So we actually we didn't even like consider Mexico either, but I have a friend that's lived in Mexico for years, and so we decided to start our journey out of the United States in Mexico, in Guanajuato, and kind of like it was a good launch for us. And so we ended up staying in Mexico for like 4 months. We hadn't even like considered Mexico, so it actually we even like opened our possibilities even more by now considering Mexico. We've loved Costa Rica. We've been here for almost 2 months now, and but I think if we came here 8 years ago, it might have been more of a possibility for us. But now 8 years later, I don't know that the cost of it is going to fit with our budget. So we're still exploring, and we're looking forward to the next year of exploration.
Yeah, and what I find really interesting with you too is that, you know, you are right now exploring, because you could just have the Costa Rica ID in your head and go to Costa Rica, buy a land or buy a house, and that's it.
Right.
But you're really into exploration. So you went to Mexico, you are exploring Costa Rica right now, and after you're going into Panama, if I'm right?
Actually, in July, we're heading to Ecuador. We're going to go to Ecuador.
Yeah, so I think
for 3 months.
It's pretty bold also to visit many countries and many cultures. And, you know, well, Costa Rica is it's very safe, but, you know, there's lots of ideas also around all these countries in Central America about safety, etc. And when you are living in this country, you realize that it's totally okay. But that's something also to explore that much and just to see where the life is sending you.
Well, that is true. And I think that, you know, there are many parts of Chicago that are very dangerous and unsafe. And like anywhere you live, anywhere anyone lives in the world, you've read it over and over again, and it's just so true. You have to be smart and aware of your surroundings and do some research about where you're going. So when we're going to Ecuador, for example, we are researching different communities, different areas of the country rather, and we're on a variety of Facebook groups in Ecuador. And of course, you can't believe everything you read, so you have to just use your own common sense. And also the fact that we're traveling together. Mark and I have a very good relationship, and we have found over the years my strengths are more of his weaknesses, and his strengths are more of my weaknesses. So as a couple, we mesh very well. I just being smart about. Even when we went to Mexico, our friends were like, "I don't know, you're going to be kidnapped, all the drug cartels," and it's like we felt so safe in Mexico. We
Yeah.
feel very safe in Costa Rica. We're just planning on being safe and just being smart.
Hmm. But that's true that with Mark, you're a good team. And like from my view, by observing you, you're like really respecting each other. I know Mark is like going up very early in the morning. He goes on a walk, a very long one, and you still sleep. But I really like that,
Yes.
you know, both of you are have common moments and which is very nice. You are adorable, but you also know yourself and you know how to respect yourself.
Hmm. Well, yes, and I think that's that you have to do that in any relationship, whether it's a parent or child or a romantic relationship and friendships and any platonic relationships. That's what relationships are all about. You have to be true to yourself. You have to be true to your partner. And yeah, I mean, we've been married 40 years, so we've kind of figured it out with one another. But you're right. We have, 5 months we've been doing this now. So for 5 months, it's really been primarily us. I mean, it was wonderful meeting you and Julian, but those are fleeting encounters, right? In the general grand scheme of things. So we're very much together, just us most of the time. So yes, we do carve out individual time each for ourselves.
Mm.
Really important.
And so you are traveling a lot right now, but have you traveled when you were working? Is that something you were doing before, or it's something really new?
It's actually, that's what is so amazing, is that we did not travel very much,
Mm.
as a married couple, or when we are raising the kids. We maybe took a vacation, a week or two vacation a year with the kids, but in the States, and only, and in the Caribbean. But only one time did we travel out of the country. We went to France, actually. But no, we were not travelers. We were very, very boomer generation, hardworking people. And Mark likes a lot of predictability, which is also why this is so wonderful, because when you travel like this, there's not a lot of, you have to be comfortable with ambiguity or unpredictability. You got to roll with the punches. And that's really not been Mark. And so, no, we didn't travel a lot. And that's why I think, even though we were talking about doing this for years, when it started happening, like the year leading up to us actually leaving the country, our friends and family were like, "Wait a minute, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "We've been talking about this for years." They're like, "Yeah, but we never believed it was going to happen, because this is so out of context for you and Mark." So I think people find it more amazing that we're doing this than we do, because we knew we could do it, even though it wasn't part of our natural lives up to that point. But people are just shocked that we're doing this, and we're doing fine.
Yeah, you're enjoying it.
Yes, we are. Yes.
I love that because often, you know, like many people have many expectations for when they will retire. And I heard so many people telling like, yeah, I'll do that when I will retire. But often
Oh,
when they really retire, they don't do anything because they didn't plan anything, or maybe also because they just are telling to people now, yeah, but now I'm too old, or
yes.
maybe they have many fears also around that kind of project, which is totally understandable. But then you are doing it, and this is why it's very interesting, because it wasn't a habit for you. It's something very new, and
Yes.
I think this is why it's so inspiring, your story. And would you
Oh,
be able to give like around 3 tips to people wanting to do it but still hesitates?
sure. Well, we're still healthy enough. I think that financially, it probably would have been perhaps better to work a couple more years and save up more. However, if if you're going to do something like this, you have to be healthy. You have to be healthy enough and have the stamina to do it. And so if we waited another 3 or 4 years, I don't know what our health would be. So we retired a little earlier than we planned because we knew we wanted to be more active in retirement than we had been in our life to that point, because of the number of hours that we worked. And so retiring a little early doesn't need to be scary financially if you explore areas where the cost of living is lower, which is exactly why we're in Central America and parts of South America. And then we really had a very well thought out plan about what we were going to do with our home, what we were going to do with our cars, and also because of the amount of hours that we did work, I also was more very sedentary, and I was not actually, even though I'm generally healthy, I was not good at taking care of my health. So because we had a very good plan that we knew we wanted, like in a year to a year and a half, to embark on the journey, I truly was very then motivated to really take a hard look at my health and take care of all those health appointments that I hadn't been doing. I lost weight, and I continue to now be stable in my weight because we're so very active. So looking at your health, attending to your health, retiring a little earlier than planned, and don't be afraid to do that. Take a hard look at your finances, meet with a financial planner. It took us meeting we had a financial planner, and it took us meeting with him once a year for 3 consecutive years. And for 3 consecutive years, he told us the same thing. Yes, you can do this. If this is your monthly budget, you could do this. And it took 3 years of me hearing him say it to be like, okay, I'm willing to take that risk. So risks are okay to take. You just have to think them through. But so you have to be a bit of a risk taker, but you have to take smart risks. So so I think that hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, it wasn't like I asked you 3 tips, but it's true that health, I think, is a priority, even if you're not traveling. Like, this is something. And
True.
You were talking a lot about planning. And I know that you did it for 5 years around, or maybe more 3 years ago.
It was more like, even like before the pandemic in 2020, we actually had an exploratory trip to Costa Rica planned in the fall of 2020. Okay. So in the fall, at that point, we had been thinking about it for 3 years. Yes, still not knowing when we would actually retire, but then we had to cancel that fall of 2020 Costa Rica trip because of the pandemic. So yeah, we've been thinking about this for like 8 years, but it was really like probably 2019, like just prior to the pandemic, that we were really very seriously thinking about it and thinking about putting a plan in place. And then during probably the first year of the pandemic, we actually put the plan in place, not knowing when the pandemic would end and, when the restrictions would be lifted. And even if, God forbid, we got sick in the pandemic, who knows? So kind of like putting that was in part of the plan. Like if we remain healthy and the pandemic ends, when could we do it? And yes, we're big planners. We're both like into logistics. I started as a clinician early in my career, but quickly moved into operations. And so I've been in operations, pretty high level operations jobs. So it's kind of like my life. And my husband's like, logistics as well. So yeah.
Okay. You are planners.
We all are planners, and our 2 daughters are as well. It's a double-edged sword. They got that from us as well. So putting together spreadsheets and, when my daughter got married, her spreadsheet was like, she had like 20 tabs on her wedding spreadsheet. Wow. So yeah, it just runs in the
That's a family
if you decide
thing.
that, you should contact her. She'll share her spreadsheet with you.
And I have a question also, like right now, do you miss the States or not?
Actually, we do not. We of course miss our children. However, with our two daughters and one son-in-law, when the pandemic, well, first of all, they didn't live in Chicago. One daughter lives in DC, and one daughter was a big traveler. And around the time the pandemic started, she was in New York. So we actually started a weekly Zoom call for the five of us. And we did it throughout the pandemic, and we still do it now. So even though we're not physically together or geographically together, we still see them. We still see them weekly on our call. And of course, we text and call throughout the week as needed. But they have their lives, we have our lives. And then of course, neither one of them have children, so we don't have grandchildren to miss. And of course, we both have very special friends who we love and family that we love. However, they all have their lives too, and we still keep in contact. Maybe because of the pandemic, because for so long, for at least 2 years, we didn't actually see them anyway. It was all like the pandemic maybe primed us for just having more of a telephonic relationship, or so maybe that helped. But no, we do not miss the States. Mark has no intention of ever seeing snow again, and never. And I believe him. And just the politics, and we don't want to be part of that fray. We don't want to be in the fray of politics, and no, we don't miss the States.
Okay, because so I'm from France, and sometimes I miss the food or I miss architecture, which not in like Guatemala it does exist architecture and history, but it's true that in Costa Rica there is not much of history of architecture. So I remember last autumn we were missing it with Julien to feel surrounded by beauty of architecture. Here we are surrounded by beauty of nature, which is amazing too. But yeah, we miss sometimes, but it's true that I'm not missing Europe also in terms of politics or whatever. In fact, we are going back to France for 2 months in 2 weeks. And as I told you just before recording this episode, is that I'm very curious about my new way of experiencing France, because we've been abroad for 1 year. So let's see how I will feel there. But it's interesting, yeah.
It will be interesting, and especially for what I have found is, I said earlier how I knew that I really need to make a change in my work because I worked so much. I didn't feel like I had any headspace to learn anything new, and I didn't want to learn anything new. But now that I'm not working, I know you're still working. I'm aware. I realize that. But for me, now that I'm not working, it's amazing how much capacity for learning I still have and desire, which is I'm so happy about, because it's like if you stop learning, you stop growing. But the little things that we're learning and seeing, it's like I never thought that I would be interested in like what kind of bird something. Like, oh, what kind of bird is that? And like, oh, look at the designs that these hermit crabs are making on the beach. These little tiny things are like so awesome for me. And so, but so when you go back to France, I don't know, hopefully if part of that is what's happened to you, like the beauty of nature, maybe you'll be looking at different things when you go home.
Yeah. Let's see. So I'll tell you.
We'll see. You'll have to let us know. Yes. Yes.
I had another question, but wait. I don't remember it. What would be interesting for people listening?
Well, I'm very proud of myself. I'm very proud of Mark as an individual and myself as an individual, and I'm proud of us as a couple. We've always had a good relationship, but when you're working very hard and you're raising your kids and you try to have a hobby here and there, it's all true. You really get caught up in the daily grind, and it's like, it's so wonderful. The time thing, when you're retired and you're learning new things and just new locations, I'm not really stressed out, even though we're moving every month. Every month we move. We both have 2 suitcases and a backpack. So we got rid of all our things. We sold our house. We sold our cars. It was very liberating. We are loving not owning anything. We're loving having a different type of responsibility. Love it. And it's just fabulous not owning anything. We have like one bill. We have like a phone bill. So it's like, it's so exciting that we don't have to pay bills. However, we're still only traveling with 2 suitcases each. Every month we're moving to a new location. So it's like learning a new area, a new community every month. And on one hand, that could be very stressful, but we look at it as it's an opportunity to learn and grow and enjoy. And so I'm really proud of us for that.
And you can. That's something.
Yeah. So, again, we're both in our early 60s, but I don't even know what that means to be in your early 60s. We feel good. I feel like I've never been healthier. And it's just great. And we also have the support of our friends and families, which is wonderful. I mean, if we had, I don't know how it would be if our children were not in support of this. It would be a lot of inner conflict for us. But so we've kind of like given ourselves permission, and people that we love have given us permission, if you will, to do this, and not no guilt trips. In fact,
that's perfect.
It took a couple. Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, there's no guilt or anything, and I had to at the beginning, my friends and family, not my children, but friends, they were never calling me. And I felt like, oh my God, we've barely been gone from the States, and here they're already forgetting about us, but they were afraid to call us. I said, why would you be afraid to call? This is our life now. This is our life. You're still part of our life. And they're like, yeah, but I don't want to bother you. You're probably on an adventure. And I'm like, then I won't answer my phone, and I'll call you later, just like I did when I was working and I couldn't call you answer a phone because I was working. It's the same thing. So it's just a really different way of looking at things. And it's also opening yourselves up to it's like if we make a mistake, or if we miss a bus, or we get on the wrong train or whatever, it's like, okay, because it's not like we have anywhere else to be. So it's okay to make mistakes. It's like,
it's
okay,
pura vida.
Fine. So let's see where we end up. Yes, exactly. It's pura vida. Yes, absolutely.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for this talk. I think it's so interesting. And as I said before, I think you are very inspiring with Mark. And
thank you.
I think if it can also inspire people to maybe get out of their comfort zone or trying something new, even if it's not traveling far away, but everything is possible. You did it.
Oh, thank you. We're doing it. Check in with me in a year, and we'll see what kind of successes we've had then. But thank you so much, Melanie. It's a pleasure.
Well, I wish you all the best for you and Mark, and maybe see you soon in somewhere else. We don't know.
Somewhere. We'll just come upon one another. Yeah, that would be lovely. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for listening this episode. If you liked it and feel inspired, I invite you to share it with your family and friends. To support this podcast, you can give it 5 stars, comment, and add it in your favorites. There are more episodes in English to come on the 3rd Friday of each month. And follow me on Instagram. Bye!